Mrs. O'Loughlin here. We are going to be looking at a menu-driven program, and the idea is to present a list of choices and then let the users choose one of those choices from a menu. We are going to implement this one with an if-else-if statement, but I'm going to tell you that I prefer using a switch case, and that will be another video that we do very shortly. So the goal is to list some options for the user, input their number or choice, and then based upon that value, we're going to go through a series of decision statements and determine what value they entered and what choice we should, or what code we should execute. We are using the Visual Studio environment, and I'm going to show you a new way to add files to your projects. Since this is a textbook source code file, I'm going to add an existing item. When you choose this option, you do have to know where your files are located. So mine are in Documents, Programming, C++, and this spring, etc. We're going to source code, and I want chapter 4. The exact program, I'm going to have to look up or remember what I want. I believe it's number 14. Wasn't 14, it is 10, so I'm choosing program 410, and we're going to add it to our source files folder, and then we're going to open up this code, and a lot of times I will right click on this code, or you can double click on it in order to open it up. And so this particular code we are going to see again and again in different scenarios, and so the first time that we see it here, I'm going to point out several things that are good programming techniques to use, and also things that we are going to be using going forward in this course. So first of all, please notice that they are creating constants for different rates, and these are rates for membership to a gym, I believe. So it's a menu-driven program. It's for a health club membership, and they're going to calculate the fee that we're going to be required. And so these are the membership rates, and they are set to a constant. Now remember, a constant value is a value that does not change. Also notice here, when naming constants, you use all caps. That's what we call a programming convention, and then you use an underscore between the words so that it's easier to read. So those values are going to be constants we will use throughout the program. Then they have three variables here. One is the choice that the user is going to use, a number of months that they're going to have a membership, and then the charges. So when we display the menu, please notice that it's just all one block. It's just a bunch of cout statements, and then they're going to have the user input a choice with just a cin statement. We also have our formatting, cout, fixed, show point, set precision 2, because we're dealing with money. We want to output to 2 decimal places. And then here's the logic for running the menu. So if the user enters 1 for choice, remember a double equals checks for equality, then it will run this code. And if the user enters a 2, etc., and a 3, etc. So this particular program uses a series of if, else, if statements. And also notice the indentation. A lot of times when we start a new level, for example, I have an if, else, if, a lot of times we might like tab in the next decision level, but in an else if statement like this, because all of the logic is kind of related at these levels, it is okay to not indent those additional statements and just keep everything lined up along the left hand side here. And then at the end it returns 0. I can use in this environment, I can use a system pause, I can use cin.get to pause the screen, or depending on what version of Visual Studio you are running, you can also use a Control F5 to run the code. And that will pause the screen, the console window, when it runs. Let's see what this program looks like when it executes. And then notice how it's going to use those constant values. So let's say I'm going to be a standard adult, and we are going to have a 6-month membership, and it did not pause the screen with my cin.get. And that actually is a common error. Let's just run this again and see if we can get the screen to stay open, and then I will explain that error that just occurred. So if I do adult, let's say 6 months, and then total charges are $720. So here's the deal. Why did that screen disappear just a minute ago? Is as soon as I input my choice here, I hit 1, enter. How many months? 6, enter. That enter key is being held on the buffer. So there's actually a value that's being held on the buffer out there, and as soon as we try to capture it, the first cn.get here will capture the end of line on the buffer. I don't know if it's actually a /n that's there, but it's similar to that. And then the second one will basically pause the screen. And so if you're going to use the cn.get in order to, quote, pause the screen, then you might need to use 2 of them. You need to use 2 of them if you have entered any data using a cn statement prior to executing. All right, the next video is going to show this same program, but we are going to look at it using a different statement rather than an if, else, if statement.